Hey everyone, welcome to A Mess Nonetheless. I am Rachel.
And I'm Melissa, and we are sisters.
So we are going to share with you guys today an episode that we recorded for specifically a conference.
Yep.
And we're just going to use it as our this week's episode. Well, so we hope you enjoy.
Yeah.
We are so happy to be here today with you guys. Thank you, Hannah, for asking us to come and be part of this conference. We are just honored and thrilled, and we hope that God is speaking to you, the other speakers you've heard, and maybe you'll take something from what we're going to talk about today.
Maybe.
That would be the hope. My sister lives in Minnesota, and we have a podcast together. We do it weekly, and it's called A Mess Nonetheless, because literally we feel like life is messy. That's true. We are messy. But life is messy. Everybody's life is a little messy, and we just don't beat around the bush. We don't sugarcoat anything. We just get right to it. And we're like, let's talk about those times when you feel crappy because a friend hurt your feelings, or you're judging someone, or you feel judged, or you hate your husband just a little bit.
I was just going to say, you hate your husband.
Those are the things we talk about here on A Mess Nonetheless. So Hannah has invited us to be part of this conference, Safe and Secure, and she wanted us to talk about when God doesn't feel safe. Now, this was a little interesting because, first of all, on our podcast, no one's ever assigned us a topic.
Right.
Sometimes we show up and we end up talking about something completely unrelated to our notes.
It's true.
It's true. So I was like, okay, we can do that. We can, be assigned a topic. But then both Melissa and I, we're sisters. We grew up in the same household. And we both are like, does God ever not feel safe to you? And Melissa's like, no. And I was like, me either. We've been mad at God. We've been confused. We've not wanted to deal with God. We felt like he's been missing. But we both felt like God has never felt unsafe to us. Now, I want to explain that because it doesn't mean we've done anything to get here.
No.
I recently was talking to a friend, and she was telling me a little bit about her childhood and how she landed on some things with God. I was like, yeah, I think our childhood has a lot to do with how we landed on things with God.
100%.
So Melissa, when we were raised with parents who loved Jesus, but they had come from kind of messy families, and so they decided to do things completely different and very countercultural, actually, from the 80s and the 90s when we grew up. And we were taught all questions are safe with God.
Yep.
All feelings are safe with God. All doubts.
Yeah.
And so as a result, I think that has allowed us to never really feel unsafe with God. Not that we've always been thrilled in our relationship with him, but we can bring everything to him. And so we were thinking about some things, because obviously we want to be good news to you guys. And we're like, well, how can we be good news if we're like, wow, God's never even felt unsafe to us? But the truth is like other people have felt unsafe to us. And so we want to talk about a couple of things. And then our last point is what we're really going to hone in on today. And that's when God feels safe enough to bring him your questions and your doubts, fears. So the first thing we're going to talk about today is when God doesn't feel safe to us, often we stop going to him, right? Yeah. So think about your husband, your best friend, your mother, your sister. When we feel unsafe in a relationship, it's incredibly natural to pull away.
You guys have not listened to our podcast. So Rachel and I are very, very close. We are best friends, but we went through a period where we weren't necessarily safe with each other and we backed off for a year and a half to 2 years. And God did a lot of rebuilding in there to help us become safe again. But you 100% can't stay pressed in with any relationship when you don't trust that relationship. And obviously God is God. So it seems like logically he should be trustworthy, but that's not true. If you were not given the example that God was trustworthy, why would he be safe? And why would you keep going to him?
Well, and I think is trustworthy, but he doesn't always feel trustworthy.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I was going to say, and a lot of times our opinion of who God is comes from our opinion of our parents. Like, if our parents were not safe, or if our parents were absent, if our parents were abusive, if our parents were aloof, if they were all the things, if they were wonderful, if they let us be safe with them, we often get, I always tell my kids that they're going to learn how to follow Jesus if they can start by following my husband and I. Like we're kind of like, God kind of gives us little kids, the parents, because we're tangible and they can see us and we can verbalize. And then as they grow, they can then decide if they can actually follow Jesus. And I think that if you are, so I don't,
if you've had any sort of struggles or hardships in your relationship with your parents, it's more likely. And I think that's why we feel like God's so safe. It's because of our upbringing, which obviously is incredible. And the ideal would be any of us raising kids would we would turn around and do the same kinds of things that our parents did for us. What were you going to say?
I was going to use the word lucky, and that's not necessarily the word I want to use. But
fortunate.
Yeah, fortunate. Like,
really fortunate.
We didn't do anything better than anyone else to end up in a family like that. Right. But it did give us a step up in having God be safe to us, which is what we're kind of wanting to break apart here.
So if we feel like God is unsafe and we pull away, the more we stop going to God, the less safe he feels.
Correct. Yeah.
And so this is the thing, is it's like, if we stop going to God because he feels unsafe, we're going to start relying on ourselves or other humans in place of him. And that obviously, that has never gone well for me. Has it ever gone well for you? I mean, I've watched it go not well for you, and you've watched it not go well for me.
Yeah. Because God gives us people, obviously, but they are not meant to be in place of him. At all. And so when they become in place of him, it just, everything goes downhill.
When he's given us a mind and free will, but good grief, it is not supposed to replace his sovereignty and authority and his will in our lives. And so, yes, it's natural to pull away from someone when they feel safe, but in the relationship with God, if you stop going to him and you pull away, he's only going to feel less safe.
Yeah.
So if you're in that position, like, God might pursue you, but it is up to us to go back to him and say, I need you to prove to me that you are safe, that I can trust you.
Yep. Well, that's what I was just going to say. Yeah. If you're in that place and you're like, right, that sounds great. So I keep reaching out to him, but I don't believe he's safe. How do we get there? How do we get to believing he's safe? And what Rachel said is exactly it. We start by asking him, like and by asking, we ask him to show us in the Bible, like show us proof in all of these stories that he was safe for other people and
in our own history. Like show me, remind me of the times. Yeah. When you were safe for me and I didn't
realize it.
To recognize it. It's like the footprints in the sand.
Yep. And he can start showing you right now. If you can, like, Lord, from this day forward, start showing me where you're safe and that I wouldn't necessarily recognize otherwise. And you'd be amazed. He wants to show you that he's safe. And so he will do that.
Absolutely. And so our last point, and this is kind of what we're going to talk about the most, is God can handle us pressing in and asking questions. Yeah. I saw a meme the other day that said, or a quote, I guess. It was on a square on Instagram, so I call it a meme.
If it's words on a square on Instagram, it is a meme.
So much more grown up. Okay, so I saw a quote. It was in the form of a meme that said, God would rather us run to him with our questions than run away from him with our doubts.
Yeah. 100%.
And I believe that fully. And we believe that the Bible absolutely backs that. So we have 3 different stories in the Bible. If we have time to, we're going to get through all of them, that are times where God literally allowed people to come in and question him, and he dialogued. Do you want to talk about Abraham in Genesis 18?
Yeah. So when Abraham was, when God was going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, Abraham he was like, wait. What if I can, I'm paraphrasing.
Well, he was like, hold on. Are you also going to get rid of the righteous people, even though there's all these wicked people?
Right. And so he's like, what if there's like 50 righteous people? Like, will you save that?
God's like, okay. For 50, fine, I would save them.
And then Abraham's like, oh, I bet there's not 50 people. What about 40? And then God's
45.
Like,
he starts at 45.
Yeah. He just keeps going down real small. I mean, it's like 30, 35, 20, 25. And every single time God is literally just having a conversation with him. Like, if that was my child, I'd be like, shut up. I already said yes to the first 2. We're done.
I already gave you my answer.
So that is proof that God is okay with us dialoguing with him. Like, oh, wait. Like, because in our own, I mean, he's not going to change the way he does things because of us, but he's going to allow us to be a part of what he wants to do and show us how he's going to do it and why he's going to do it. And ultimately, there was no righteous people. So it ended up being,
2 thumbs down. But God allowed him to be a part of that. Yeah, exactly. Well, and then Melissa and I were reading in Habakkuk.
We have not been able to. We even found out how to say it, and we still can't say it right.
YouTube told us how to say it. We still can't say it. How do you say it again?
Well, I think I've always said Habakkuk.
Habakkuk, and I was like, is it Habakkuk? Apparently, we were both wrong. It's like,
and it's a different inflection that we cannot recall.
We put the
emphasis was on the wrong syllable.
What movie is that from? They put the wrong emphasis on the wrong syllable. That's right. It is from the movie Airplane. You guys need YouTube. It's so funny. It's so old. It's from like the 80s, isn't it?
So old, yes.
Oh my gosh. We use that line all the time in our family. Okay. Yep. So Melissa and I do indeed put the wrong emphasis on the wrong syllable when it comes to Habakkuk.
Habakkuk.
But we're going to read about him anyway. So I love the story. He's a prophet. And so, the prophets, they were supposed to go and talk to the people on behalf of God. But Habakkuk never did that.
Yeah.
Instead of going to the people for God, he's basically just dialoguing with God. And he's not happy. So if you're a parent in this room, I am certain if you have more than one child that you have children who believe you are parenting the other children inappropriately. Like,
yes.
Well, you're just going to let them get away with that and you're okay with this? And it's like,
why don't you ask them to do that? Why am I the only one who ever asks?
It's so annoying. Oh my gosh. It's one of honestly, the biggest problems I think in parenting is getting your other kids to stop parenting and questioning your parenting and stuff like that.
Yes.
So this is what he's doing with God. He's literally like, so you're just okay with these like Israelites and how terrible and disobedient and rotten they're being? And God's like, oh no, I have a plan.
Yeah.
I'm going to let the Babylonians come in and take over. And he's like, the Babylonians, they're even worse.
Yeah.
He's like, how could you use an even more wicked and evil nation to like deal with this nation? And God's like, I got a plan. Okay. Like I got a plan. And God is like so gracious with him. And this is such a prime example of God showing us, like with Abraham.
Yeah.
He didn't smite either one of them. He didn't cut them off.
Yeah.
He did not say, forget it. I'm not going to use you. You don't get to be part of things. Worse, you're kicked out of, this relationship with me.
Yeah.
And this is what tells us God is safe for us to ask him the things, to say the hard things.
He expects us to show up as human because he created us as human. Like he doesn't expect us to show up as perfect or as having it. He knows that we're a mess. Like he knows exactly what we are. And here, when we don't say it, he still knows it. When we don't reveal it to him, he still knows it.
It's true.
And so we're like hiding from him the things that he already knows.
Well, and I think when we try to keep something from God, it only gets worse. It's like it stews. And one of the things I want to talk about is that when we try to like hide things from God or just not even hide things, we just don't go to him. That opens the doors for the enemy to step right on in.
Yeah.
And that's the last thing we want. Cause like if we already think God's not safe and now we are on the enemy's like playground, turf, whatever, it's like everything is going to get worse. Nothing will get better in that place.
Yeah.
And so I really want to encourage all of us, myself included, to start having the conversations with God. Melissa said to me today, I tell God the things I don't even tell you. I was like, oh, that's a thing? I didn't even know there were things you didn't tell me.
The worst things in my head that I can't say out loud, God hears. I know he knows it, but I say it to him.
Which builds.
I confess it to him. I mourn it with him. I ask for release from it with him. Like he's very intimately involved in the worst of myself. Yeah.
Yeah. And to be clear, we are not saying like, oh, we're supposed to show up and like parent God and like our kids do. We're just saying that's what Habakkuk, that guy did. We're not saying that's what we should do. We're just saying
it's just an example of he lets us talk to him.
Exactly. I just want to be super clear about that. Like we're not saying like show up and just like, parent. He is still God. He is still all powerful. He is still all knowing, way above anything that we could ever be. Yeah. But that's what's so beautiful about the fact that he allows. I mean, why would he allow these people to do it? And then it's in his Bible.
Right. Well, I mean, like historically, kings could kill a person in their kingdom just for looking at them.
Yeah.
And then we have, and then we have the king of the universe, the king of all creation, the creator of it all, who is like, come and talk to me. Tell me what you want. Even if I'm not going to give it to you, tell me what your thoughts are. He's not threatened by our anger. Like when we're angry at him or towards him because something has gone really, really wrong, he wants to hold us in that. He understands it because we're human. So of course, if we have lost a child, we're going to be angry at God for a while. Like that is so normal. And he knows that and he grieves with us and wants to hold us through that. And if we stay with him, one of these days we won't be angry at him anymore. Right. We will move forward. But if we push him away because we don't think he's safe, our anger might not ever leave. Like it might just stay there forever. And so
it's true. Yeah. So the last person in the Bible we just want to talk about is Job. And we actually talked about Job on one of our recent podcasts in kind of great detail over a two-part series. But we love the story of Job because if you don't know the story, basically God is like sitting there talking to Satan and he's like, see my servant Job, look at how amazing, how wonderful and righteous and faithful he is. And Satan's like, well, yeah, because you've given them like everything he'd want. What if you took all it away? So God allows Satan to get involved and do whatever he wants to Job as long as he doesn't kill him.
Mhm.
And we watch Job lose everything. And then we see 38 chapters, and they are long chapters.
Mhm.
They're filled
Painful.
chapters. Painful, yeah,
Mhm.
where he is questioning God. I don't understand. He never doubts that God is supreme. He never
Mhm.
doubts God's existence, but he's like, I don't understand. I've
Yeah.
got questions I would like answered. I don't think
Yeah.
I've done anything to deserve this, so like I would like to hear from you.
Yeah.
And God steps in chapter 38. He lets Job, I mean, he could have come in like chapter 1 and been like, excuse me, I'm here, hello. But he lets Job have these long monologues of questions, and
Mhm.
we were talking on a lot.
Lamenting and confusion and
Yes. And when God came in, I mean, he put Job in his place. Don't get me wrong. He was like, I'm sorry, did you put the sun
Right.
in the sky? Did you put the waters in land?
Yeah.
He does put Job in his place, but he does it with compassion and love. And I just think it's so great that he allows Job to have those feelings.
Yeah.
And he doesn't come in and go, you're wrong.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm going to smite you for this or whatever. And I
Right.
just think
Right.
that these are wonderful examples of how we can bring anything to God,
Well,
including our doubt, including our, frustrations. And what were you
yeah,
going to say?
even Jesus, like, he knew what his mission on
Mhm.
earth was. He knew what
Mhm.
he was here for. And the night in the garden before he was gonna be crucified, he was like, "Is there any other way, God? Like, is
Right.
there
Mhm.
anything else that can be done instead of this?"
Mhm.
Like, if the God of the universe in the flesh can ask it
Mhm.
to the God of the universe in the non-flesh, and they can have I mean, like, because
Yeah.
Jesus was all human and, and also all God, but he
Mhm.
represented the humanity in us in that
Right.
moment. And there's nothing in the Bible that isn't there for us to guide us and to teach us
Mhm.
and to give us security. And
Right.
I mean, these are just 4 really quick stories of the security that
Right.
God is safe and he wants us
Mhm.
to come to him.
Mhm. And so if you're in this place where you're like, well, I don't go to him for everything, start.
Mhm.
On our
Yeah.
podcast, we challenge people every single week. At the
Mhm.
end, there's a challenge. And our
Yep.
challenge to you is start.
Mhm.
Start bringing everything to him. If you
Yeah.
grew up in an environment, religious or home or whatever, where your feelings were not safe, you were just supposed to fall in line, this might be harder for you. You might
Yeah.
have to start being very intentional. Come back and listen to this. We will load this on our podcast after the
Yeah.
conference. After
Mhm.
today, it will be on our podcast, and it will be titled something about when God isn't safe or something like that.
Yep.
And, you know, remind yourself of these stories. Use these people from the Bible as an example of, okay, I can do this.
Mhm.
And the truth is like pulling away from God, like we said, will never satisfy.
No.
We do only feel worse. And we have been there. Melissa and I have been there
Yeah.
where we have pulled away from God, not
Yeah.
because he wasn't safe, but just for other reasons.
Right.
And we always regret it. We're never like,
It's
oh,
just
now I'm better. I got my
it's
space.
lonely.
It
Yeah,
is
it's so
lonely.
lonely, and it's something's missing, and we know it's
Mhm.
missing, and we
Yep.
know it's God, and yet sometimes we stick in that place where we just keep pulling away, and it until
Mhm.
you stop pulling away,
Mhm.
that part will never be healed.
It's true. Well, what was that song? There's a God-sized hole in all of us, something
Yeah.
like that, in our hearts or
Like,
whatever.
yeah,
It's a little cheesy, but the truth
but it's
is
real.
that
Mhm.
it's real. There is a
Yeah.
part of us that is
Mhm.
not fulfilled by anything but a relationship with God. So walking away, pulling away, holding him,
Yeah.
out at
Yeah.
hand's distance, keeping him at bay is never going to make us feel whole and fulfilled and satisfied. And I don't know about you, but I think everybody wants to feel whole and fulfilled and free and satisfied.
I think that's what we spend all of our life doing, is
It's
trying to
true.
find freedom and whole, a place to belong,
It's
to
true.
not feel lonely, to feel like we matter. I mean, all of
Mhm.
that is like I think every adult's life goal is to figure those things out.
Well,
And
what's the book Purpose Driven Life, where it's like,
yeah,
or even just like cartoons will be like, what's the purpose of life? What's the
yeah,
meaning of life?
yeah.
It's like
Mhm.
it's kind of,
It's asked all the time.
it's kind of a
Yeah,
thing, even with
yeah,
non-Christians. What's the meaning of life? Well, for
yeah.
those of us following Jesus, we know what the meaning of life is.
Mhm,
We know
mhm.
what the whole purpose is, and we are always seeking it, but we
Yeah,
don't always seek it in God.
right. Yeah,
Sometimes we pull away or we keep away and we just seek it in other things, and they will
yeah,
truly never satisfy.
correct. Yeah.
So,
What's cool though is that when you let God be a part of it, those things, like let's say
mhm,
exercise is something that you seek to satisfy you, but you remove God, it's not going to fulfill you. But you bring
right.
God into the picture, now he is like, I totally produce exercise. Go do it. And you're going to have,
Mhm.
it's going to be so much more satisfying, the things you love, because God is lined up first.
Yeah.
Like
Well, and
he
they can
is the
become
one.
spiritual things too.
Absolutely, for
You can
sure.
use them in a spiritual way.
It's so true.
So that's our challenge. And we thank you so much for having us.
Yeah.
We hope you'll start listening to us. We are on all your favorite podcast stations, and we're on YouTube or podcast apps. I guess it's not stations, but
whatever.
We're from the radio station days. And we are on YouTube. So if you prefer to watch, the people who do say they watch regularly, they say, I like to see the interactions and the facial expressions. Unfortunately, you will hear us or see us coughing, muting, coughing, sneezing, Melissa telling your kid to get away. My dog was in our last podcast. We're just not even pretending that anything's perfect over here.
Nope, that's it.
So we will close, and you will hear our theme song as we end, and I hope you laugh and love it. Our brother made it on a whim for us, and we've been using it ever since. So thanks so much for having us, you guys. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye.
You might feel that your life is a mess, but don't feel bad. Ours is too, but we own a microphone and we have no shame. That's why we'll talk about how our life is a mess nonetheless. That's the name of our podcast.